to see if I can get that closed and get us started. So, good
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Thanks, Kyle.
I'm having some issues, but I don't know what it is. I can't move anything.
You can't move our board
I
docs.
mean, I think I can operate, but
Okay.
go ahead. I think
All right, let me know if you're, oh, there, Brad took over the screen, so. Okay, so in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22, the House and House Bill 197, I hereby call to order the Board of Education of the Bexley City School District regularly scheduled board meeting of Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. In so doing, I feel compelled by the events surrounding George Floyd's death and countless others, stories known and unknown, to note that the job of educating our youth is essential to dismantling the oppressive burdens of racism that are crippling our country. It is with humble and hopeful hearts that we meet tonight to do a very small part of the work needed to create a country where all voices are valued and heard, while also recognizing and demanding that so much more be done. So given that, Mr. Smith, will you please give us the roll call?
Ms. Snowden.
Here.
Ms. Minio.
Sorry, here.
Mr. Barno.
Here.
Ms. Mitchell.
Here.
Ms. Powers.
Here.
Thank you. Can I have an approval for the minutes, please? Motion for approval. Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes under 1C signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. And going forward, can I have I just need to check one item to make sure it made it on here. Yes, it did. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve our agenda for tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our Board of Education reports. I start with that, and under the policy committee, I'm going to let Ms. Minio lead that discussion since she and I do that board together. As for operations, I've had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Williams, who has been busy this last week, especially, well, all the time, but this last week especially, trying to best deal with our busing situation. So we're still working on that. We have, as you all know, we have capacity needs, and we want to make sure we're as efficient as possible with our busing and cost effective as possible. So Dr. Williams is looking into that, but it is nothing is yet decided. He hopes to bring a resolution to us or a proposal to us for the July board meeting, but he doesn't have that. He doesn't have all the information together yet. I will just say that his current plan is to, even if we go with an outside vendor, to make sure that we retain our current bus drivers on their current routes. So I know that's a concern to some in our community. So I just wanted to give our board a report on that. Secondly, he's also working, we have received a generous offer to repave and redo our tennis courts from a community member. And so Dr. Williams is working on the specifics of that, and we hope to have something to bring to you for the July meeting for that. Finally, I will just say on my report that I know this has been a really challenging time for all of us. And as we seek as a board to communicate better with our community, which is an ongoing concern of ours and something that we continue to work on, I just want to note that it's a challenge for us board members to be able to communicate well with everybody because we're limited to the Opens Meeting Act of how what we say doesn't only speaks for us individually. So we can only speak to the authority of our office when we meet together to determine a collective decision. So we have been looking at ways to be on Facebook and other social media to try and get more accurate information out there. But I will say that it's especially now a very fluid situation. So in some ways it feels best to pick a time that we report in, being every month for us, so that we can give the most accurate information. That being said, Alicia Mitchell in our last at our last board retreat in February, agreed to help do some research around Facebook and social media and how we might use those while still complying with open meetings laws and public document requests. So we're going to continue to work on that to try and combat some of the misinformation that comes out on Facebook that causes a fair amount of consternation. So that's an ongoing effort. And that's my report. Ms. Minio.
Thanks, Ms. Snowden. The policy committee did not meet in May, but we are scheduled to meet on June 22nd. We have 8 policies to review, and they include career advising, student and staff relations, and student attendance and accounting. And so to all the board members, it's just a reminder that if you have feedback on the policies, you should get it to me, Ms. Snowden, and Dr. Miller by the 22nd. And then for members of the community, what we actually changed the way we did our policy committee within the last year so that we have a first reading and a second reading. And between the first reading and the second reading, you have the opportunity to provide us feedback as well. So look for the policy information in the next, at our next meeting, our July meeting, and then there'll be opportunity to give us feedback, which really kind of leads me into the next piece. So I want to thank everyone in the community. First, I want to thank all the members of our community for the, supporting our students, not only the graduating class of 2020, but all the students who kind of survived and tried to flourish in their distance learning. And we're happy to see summer vacation be here. We're ready to move forward. So thank you for your support. But I want to thank, everybody who took the time to share their feelings or their opinions with us via phone call or email. That's very much appreciated. If you're not aware, per our board protocols, Ms. Snowden kind of replies for the entire board. If you wrote an email and you did not get one back, I promise it was not from lack of effort of trying to communicate. We have had a lot of communication coming and going lately, so hopefully you feel like you got a response to your email. If you didn't, we certainly will try and address that. I think that's everything.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Barno.
I do not have any specific reports for any of the committees that I am on, but I just wanted to echo what Ms. Minio said about graduation and how well it was done considering the circumstances. And not only that, but how much the community added to it by the reverse parade and everything else that went on for, I think, a lot of people that would never or wouldn't have been involved with the graduation otherwise, but for what's going on. So it was kind of a silver lining for what was going on at, and what we're dealing with at this stay at home and the virtual graduation. And I watched it on YouTube and everything was, it was well beyond what I even expected. And I expect a lot from our administrators and from our students and from everybody in this community, but well beyond that. So I just wanted to say thank you for everyone that not only put it together and contributed, but that participated and supported it. So I don't have any other reports, but I did want to make sure I noted that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell.
Facilities hasn't met, obviously, in the last several months. However, Bexley Education Foundation, as you all know, but I'll report out for our community, just recently generously passed a resolution to help us with our one-to-one initiative in the coming months, and we're very grateful and thankful for that partnership. Elementary students who won the Invention Convention prizes all received those this past week. And those prizes were funded by the BEF's Judah Folkman Class of 1950 Science Endowment Fund. The Bexley Education Foundation is also participating in the Big Give, which is the 24-hour online giving rally hosted by the Columbus Foundation. Gifts made to the BEF from June 10th at 10 a.m. through June 11th at 11 a.m. will be boosted thanks to a $1 million plus bonus pool. Credit card fees will be paid by the Columbus Foundation also, so hopefully that won't be a deterrent. And there's also a text to give option, and they will have more detailed information out very soon. So potentially for those of you who annually give to the BEF or haven't started before, this would be a great time to do that now. I do want to take an opportunity, Ms. Snowden and Dr. Miller, to thank you both for publicly acknowledging the community discourse and pain that the community is feeling right now. I spent the weekend waiting for my husband to come home, who was downtown serving in riot gear, and understanding and knowing how conflicted he felt because of it. Because even in our own family, we have our own collective stories that make up this overall experience that the rest of the nation is participating in right now. And in the near 11 years that I've been here in Bexley, we sometimes have ignored or not been very vocal about the loss of life in Black and Brown communities. And to have our district leadership openly having this discussion and not avoiding it sends a very poignant message to the students of color in our district and our staff members, that you do hear us and that you value the trauma and the pain that this experience that we all feel. So I don't want to get too emotional because I am an ugly crier. So that is all I have to report for right now.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Ms. Powers. Do we lose her? Let's see if we can.
Is she on mute?
I don't know if she is. Let's see. I know she was having trouble. Mr. Barno is next door, so we're going to see.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I hope it stays that way. I'll keep hitting the button again. I apologize. I wanted to start by thanking Ms. Mitchell for that statement. I really appreciate what Ms. Mitchell just said and the statements that have come from others about what our community is experiencing right now. And so I think we all gather together mindful of all of that. And as Marley said, with humble and hopeful hearts, and I appreciate that as well. I do want to mention the graduation ceremony, the speakers, the parade on Drexel, the honors videos, everything was all just really fantastic. And I'm so grateful for all of the effort that went into recognizing our seniors. I'm also very, very grateful to the community for all the outpouring of information and input that we have received over the past several weeks. Without that input, we can't do our jobs well. And Marley mentioned the difficulty of communication. It's especially difficult now when we're not in the community in the same way that we normally are. And so the phone calls and the messaging is really important, and very grateful for it. I want to thank in particular the Bexley Education Foundation and the Bexley Music Parents Leadership. Those organizations have both been very much a partner right now, talking but also listening to what is happening. I'm thankful to the leadership of the Bexley Music Parents for doing just that, giving us information and listening and understanding. And a shout out to the Bexley Education Foundation for the impact grant that they have just announced, which is $250,000 at a very critical time for us to support the one-to-one devices and the initiative that's going forward, so that there is an ability for us to make sure that we are closing any gaps in access, gaps in opportunity for our students as we manage through remote learning and going forward in hybrid type learning. So very, very grateful for that. The board that I serve on, the Bexley Recreation Department Board, has had 2 meetings since our last regularly scheduled school board meeting. Most recently, the discussions have included discussions about how to provide not Jeffrey summer camp, but a summer daycare. And the Bexley Rec Department leadership is very grateful for the work that's been added to their work by our leaders here, administration, teachers, and staff, and helping to make that Jeffrey summer camp possible, and have it go forward, not at Jeffrey Mansion, but in our school building. So that's been a great effort on behalf of the Bexley Rec Department with the support of our district. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving along, that concludes our board updates. And we will look forward soon to having a new student council president, Sarah George, with us. But for now, that's the end of our board updates. So we'll move on to, sorry, I keep thinking I can control the agenda on this. Sorry, Brad. To our public participation. You'll see our guidelines listed there, but in this event with a Zoom call, what we've had to do is have people write in advance. We had that posted on our website, and we have received several public comments. I understand that City Council does this different. Given our security constraints, we were most comfortable in doing it this way. So I appreciate everybody's patience and understanding, and knowing that your voice will be heard, even if it's not actually your voice, your written word will be heard. And we, again, appreciate everybody who's reached out. So Mr. Krill, can you read those for us, please?
Sure can. All right, we have 8 public comments tonight. The first one is from Robin Judd, and she says, "It was with tremendous disappointment that I learned that the board was considering a vast number of reductions and changes, including, but not limited to, the reduction of the orchestra teacher from full-time to part-time, the shifting of AP exam costs onto families, and not replacing the vacated assistant band position. As a parent of 2 Bexley High School graduates and an educator, I am deeply saddened to learn of these budget moves, particularly given the turbulent, uncertain nature of our times. Moreover, as someone who voted for the levy this past fall, your move to make these cuts makes me question the support I extended in November. I do hope that you will reconsider." The next comment comes from Susan Steinman of 300 South Drexel Avenue. "Let me first express my appreciation for your very thoughtful efforts to navigate this unprecedented situation of a pandemic that has disrupted the traditional educational process. There are tough decisions. I would like to share a couple of general thoughts from the perspective of a Bexley community member whose two daughters went through Bexley schools, who will have a grandchild beginning kindergarten in 3 years, and who worked with school staff for a number of years on social emotional programming. While there may be pressure to keep the curriculum and student experiences the same, putting a pause on certain enrichment classes and experiences to cut expenses should not have a long-term negative impact on students. More importantly, I believe, is figuring out how to keep students socially and intellectually connected and engaged with school if learning is virtual and their social experience is limited. This will require creative, out-of-the-box thinking. In other words, a focus on teacher-student relationships, peer relationships, and school connectedness is going to be necessary to support academic learning. Figuring out how to build school community in a different way during this pandemic will be very important. A top priority remains keeping students and their families safe and healthy. Thank you for what you do for our students and our community. The third comment comes from Amy Lauerhouse. Sorry if I'm butchering anyone's name this evening. She lives 753 Francis Avenue. Please clarify the following at tonight's meeting. If the reduction of the orchestra position is not financially driven, then why does the elementary program need to be put on pause at all? Were any of the music teachers consulted about this? Who determined that there cannot be elementary band or orchestra? I feel, as well as do other parents, that there are many ways to keep a beginning orchestra and band program active despite not being able to perform and despite not being able to meet in person. I urge you to ask the administration if the music staff has been consulted about this and if there has been a dialogue about creative solutions during the COVID restrictions. All right, our fourth comment comes from Courtney Eckel. Could someone please tell me why music is paused? Regardless of whether the children return in person as usual in the fall or at the other end of the spectrum, they do full distance learning for the entire year. Music can be done using technology. So you are telling me that children can learn to draw or do yoga via Zoom, but they cannot join their voices in song? My daughter is learning multiple instruments via Zoom, and it works just the same as learning science or many other subjects for that matter. Is it ideal? No. I believe that learning for all subjects is ideal within the educational setting where multimodal instruction and intervention can be best implemented. However, to say these things require a pause is simply a way to erase these subjects from the curriculum, at which point people can become comfortable with the idea that the children no longer need access to this critical education. I would appreciate more information on this topic from the district as a concerned taxpayer, educator, psychologist, and child advocate. Our fifth comment is from Kim Roars. Hello, I am a parent of a soon-to-be fifth grader and first grader at Montrose. I implore you to keep the music programs regardless of distance learning next year. As a child, I did not have access to orchestra, and band only began in 7th grade. One of the reasons we chose Bexley was for the music programs. My fifth grader plays bass and loves it. Please don't take this away from her. She has had to put so many things on pause. Please don't take away something that she enjoys and wants to do. She can learn through distance learning. If piano teachers can successfully continue through Zoom, surely the school can brainstorm ways as well. Our next comment comes from Nick Long of 140 North Cassingham Road. I was recently informed of the intention of the school district to hire additional administrative staff while at the same time having to come up with budget cuts in excess of $1 million. It's also my understanding that these suggested cuts could significantly impact the music programs we currently have in place at our elementary schools. I am highly disappointed that the district would suggest hiring more administration, which will surely come at a high cost, while at the same time cutting a very impactful program that could be argued has more direct beneficial impact on our student body. I ask that the superintendent and school board take a more student-centered approach. In the current environment, our students now more than ever need enrichment opportunities. The elementary age is a small window of opportunity for us to foster students' openness to take small risks to better understand those subjects that will lead them to entirely new modes of thinking and learning. Please do not cut the arts. If Bexley is going to be bold, then I challenge our current administration to think creatively, stay lean, and put the children of our community first. Our next comment is from Robert Singletary of 993 Eau Claire Avenue. I'm extremely concerned about the apparent increase of administrative salaries that the Bexley school system has had over the last few years. Back in October 2019, prior to the passage of the recent school board levy, I wrote an editorial to the Columbus Dispatch that detailed my concerns over additional administrative positions that the school system has added. Then, just this past week, I heard that there was a possibility with the recent cuts made by Governor DeWine to balance the Ohio State budget that elementary teaching positions for art and music in the Bexley school system would be paused or possibly scaled back permanently in an attempt to balance the budget. All three of my children grew up in the Bexley school system, and music and art contributed greatly to their education. Becky Liefeld, who was a longtime art teacher at Montrose, was named Bexley Teacher of the Year in 2013 by the Bexley Education Foundation. She had a profound influence on all the children she taught at Montrose. In addition, Nonan Mooney, who taught music to all three of our children at Montrose, was named Columbus Symphony Orchestra Music Educator of the Year in 2000. Music and art are among the programs that make the Bexley school system a cut above other school systems. These elementary teaching positions cannot be cut. I believe that the additional administrative positions, which I believe are unneeded, have added a strain to this year's budget and future budgets that will result in a decline in the education of our students are getting while continuing to increasing our taxes. As a result, I would like to see a spreadsheet published either on the Bexley School System website or in the Bexley School Board minutes that details the following. Starting with fiscal year 2009-2010 and going forward each year to fiscal year 2020-2021, I would like to see the number of non-teaching positions and full-time equivalents and the amount of salaries spent for these non-teaching positions. I would also like to see the number of teaching positions and full-time equivalents for each of these years in the amount of salaries spent on those teaching positions for basis of comparison. I believe that this will show the administration has had a substantial increase in the administrative positions that the taxpayers are having to pay for. Not only have our taxes gone up tremendously, but we are now seeing a possible decrease in programs for our students. I also recently read that Alicia Mitchell said that no stone will be left unturned in an attempt to save money. I applaud her for this comment, and I hope that the school board will start by looking at the administrative positions. Thank you for all your efforts on behalf of the Bexley school system. And we have one more comment. This is from Shannon Nelson of 310 South Stanwood Road. As a past president of Bexley Theater Parents and as the mother of two children who have benefited enormously from the school district's theater program, I write to urge the board to take any appropriate actions to preserve the theater department's tremendous and unique offerings. I am absolutely convinced that my children have learned and grown more from Bexley Theater than they have from any of the schools offering outside of the arts. My son, for example, has blossomed as a member of the improv troupe and has found a wonderful creative and social outlet in performing in and assisting with production of numerous plays. He is very excited about taking theater ensemble this fall. My daughter considers her ensemble class experience one of the highlights of her high school career, and her acting and leadership skills have been honed over many stimulating productions. Because of the exposure and experience these programs have given her, she is determined to pursue her love of theater in college and beyond. I know that most of you understand and appreciate just how special and important the Bexley Theater program is. The performances these kids work together to put on are nothing short of remarkable. Bexley Theater programs frequently attain astonishing professional levels. Over the years and starting in young grades, the theater program has built tremendous momentum that would make it the envy of virtually any successful high school sports program. It is important that we not stop that momentum and diminish this key educational asset. I understand that providing for these necessary theater spaces, classes, and direction demand resources, and that the conditions created by COVID-19 strained the school's budget. But as I sought to express in my letter supporting Bexley's premier music programs, the arts set our district apart while providing enormous academic benefits to a large number of kids. It would be short-sighted to believe that the theater is anything but key to the success of our school's educational mission. The additional resources we need at this juncture should be sought primarily from reductions in the district's non-teaching bureaucracies and from efficiencies in programs less central to the heart of the district. I hope that the board will take every step appropriate to preserve and enhance Bexley's theater programs. Any other result, in my view, would be a true shame. Please let me know if there is anything I can do at this time to provide you with further information or to discuss potential cost savings in areas where the district can absorb them without real harm to students. Thank you very much for your consideration, and thank you again for your service to Bexley's school community. And that was the last of our comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Troll, for doing that for us. And thank you to everybody who wrote in. We do appreciate your comments. And, you know, we are taking notes and paying attention. So thank you. We're moving on to our agenda now to 4A through H. That's our superintendent's report. Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller, you have to unmute. Sorry.
Sorry, I thought I hit it. I'd also like to start. Today I sent a message to our staff and community about the need we have to do our part to make our city, state, and nation one where each person is valued and respected. We are living in difficult times in America, and while we are coping with the impact of coronavirus on our families, our finances, and our work, we've been reminded in the past few days that as a nation, we need to address the racism and hatred that plague our country. We cannot engage, equip, and empower each student if we don't truly value the individuals who are part of our schools. We cannot engage, equip, and empower each student if we are more focused on divisiveness than solutions. I will work so that Bexley schools and our staff will be examples of how to honestly and respectfully engage in conversations that will help us to be better ourselves and equip our students to be the positive difference makers today and into the future. And I appreciate our board and your comments as well. And I know that I feel for our students and our staff who are experiencing this more personally than some, but we will definitely be part of the solution in equipping our children for the future. So thank you. I'd like to turn to a few agenda items that I'd like to highlight. 4B is certified contracts. You'll see on there Andrew Del Rosso. He will be teaching 7th grade math at the middle school, replacing Sarah Robertson, who is going to a vacant 6th grade English language arts position. He is coming to us from a charter school in Cleveland, where he was highly respected by staff and students, and we are excited to have him join our teaching ranks. Also joining our teaching ranks is Toby Fisher. He will be our tech integration coach. This is again a teaching position, and he will join our other instructional coaches to directly support our teachers with the integration of technology as we transition to a one-to-one environment. Toby is coming from Reynoldsburg, where he was a middle school principal, and he has decided he wants to return to his teaching and coaching roots. He has previous experience as a technology coach, so we are excited to have his experience. And I understand he joined us and wanted to say something to the board, so I'll pause right now so that he can do that.
Thank you. A little different, but normally when I get to introduce myself to a board, I get to shake your hand and everything. So I look forward to the day where I get to do that. But it truly is an honor. I want to thank the board and the education community of Bexley for choosing me to step back into a teaching role again. And I'm really excited to be able to support our teachers and our students and all of our educators as we're using technology in ways some of us have never used it before. So I look forward to meeting all of you in a future face-to-face when we're allowed to shake hands and greet each other in different ways again. But till then, I look forward to seeing and hearing from all of you as I start to follow the social media in different places. So thank you for this position.
Yay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you, Toby. And just as we do extended year contracts for some of our teachers, our librarians, we're doing an extended year contract, especially this year because we are going to need Mr. Fisher to help us with our transition from one-to-one beginning in early August. So appreciate that he's able to make that work. On 4C, there are some classified changes. Mr. Christopher Cokes is retiring after 40 years of service to Bexley City Schools. Mr. Eikenberry shared with me that half of those he has been a head custodian for us. And I'm going to read a note from Mr. Eikenberry. He says, if you have by chance noticed the guy with the cool hats running floor machines, needed to make our floors sparkle and seemingly at the same exact moment masterfully setting up for multiple events at the Cassingham complex, then you know Mr. Cokes. He is always courteous to all staff, students, parents, peers, and custodians. He never stopped moving during the course of the evening, that's true. 40 years of service to our staff, students, and the residents of Bexley who have walked through the doors of our complex with great sense of pride and greeting everyone with a smile. And I will say, we are going to miss him. As I'm walking to events in the evening, it is true that he's always in the hallway. He's always smiling. He is always just a light in our building. And so we are very happy for him in his retirement, but we will miss him greatly. So thank you to Mr. Cokes. We look forward to seeing you a little bit longer before you go. 4D, you'll see some exempt staff changes. Art Banks has announced his retirement. We did eliminate his position, which was a savings, which was, had some supervisory duties with it. So we've eliminated those and assigned those to Mr. Eikenberry, again, in order to reduce some of our administrative costs. Was not necessarily an administrator in the typical sense, but had an administrative role. And so, but he also decided that he was ready to retire. So we wanted to recognize that because he also has served our district for many years, 30 years of service to Bexley City Schools. The position we have to kind of manage the warehouse, so again, taking away the supervisory duties and assigning those to another person. But there's still some work to be done, and I think he is interested in that, so we're hoping to keep him around a little bit longer, although he'll be officially retired. And then I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Smith to mention Joan Robertson, who's our assistant to the treasurer, is going to have a reduced contract, and I'll let Mr. Smith talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, as you know, Joan's been in this position about as long as I've been with the district, about 3.5 years. And as we've kind of grown together in our positions, we came upon a mutual agreement that we'll try 4 days a week with her current position just because of the workload. So just filling 4 days out of 5 days a week for this year to see if it's not too much on the rest of the office with her being out for a day. So I'm thankful for Joan and her work and figuring out how we'll manage without her just for a day a week. Shouldn't be too bad, but I have a great staff and Joan is still going to be around even on that day she's not working.
Okay, so I'm going to skip 4F and come back to it in just a minute. But 4G is a memorandum of understanding with our Bexley Education Association. Per our negotiated agreement, we normally allow 10 calendar days when we have an open position for a transfer, and we mutually agreed that we would reduce that to 5 days through July 9th, just so that if there were openings, even at this point we had a resignation and there was a transfer, that would happen on a faster timetable, and then we could move forward. So appreciate once again our BEA and the partnership that we've had through this process. So you'll see that MOU. You'll also notice in there a commitment that we will review all involuntary transfers that we've had to make as a result of the hiring freeze, the resolution you passed on May 18th. We did have to do some involuntary transfers. Definitely want to be able to review those next year and hopefully put everybody back to their normal spots. We made a priority not to lose any of our staff because it is our goal to get everything back to the way it was before coronavirus, and we don't want to lose the people that we want in those spots. And I also want to recognize the teachers. I had to make 4 very difficult phone calls related to involuntary transfer. And while it's hard, our staff was so appreciative that we have figured out a way to retain every single staff member in our district, and that's every secretary, every custodian, every food service worker, every administrator, every teacher. That is not the case everywhere. And they were gracious. Some people said, whatever you need me to do, I'm here for the students, whatever we need to do. And just positive. I had an email today from one who said, I'm really excited about this new thing I'm going to do. So just want to, again, thank our staff for their commitment to our students. And we have a whole component of our strategic plan about being student-centered, and they just really showed that. So nobody wants to make those calls. That's one of the least favorite things of my job. There are a number of things, unfortunately, that are not fun to do, but that's leadership. But boy, their responses really made it so much better. So thank you to our staff. And now I want to go back to 4F, which is our strategic plan goals for the year. I'm going to give you a little history lesson here. In the spring of 2018, we engaged our staff, our students, and our community in a comprehensive strategic planning process. We used surveys, we did an open community meeting, and we did a number of focus groups. And we basically said to our community and our staff and our students, what do we do well and where do we have opportunities for growth and improvement? And so we built our strategic plan around that. And it was written for a 3 to 6 year time frame, but we wrote it with 3-year objectives. And each year we take time in the spring, usually in March and April, and we review the goals for the year and that we had and our progress, and then we set our goals for the next year. Well, just as we were getting ready to do that this year in March, our whole world changed and everything got put on hold while we figured out how to do school in a completely different way and deal with new laws and new requirements. But we were able to come back to this, and typically I would bring you the annual goals for the following school year in June, and so we've been able to stay on that track. I won't go through great detail. The board has had this for a couple of weeks to review. We do post this on our website, but really what we're doing is going from the 1920 goal and how do we morph that. And I'll say, having gone through this work before, first year is often identification, second year is often learning, and in third year there's an accountability to implementing the things that you said you were going to do. And so we're going into that third year where it can become a little more stressful on us because the expectations go up. So under our theme, as I just mentioned, we have a theme to build upon our student-centered learning culture. We have talked about instructional strategies, evidence-based instructional strategies, and being consistent and aligned. That was one of the big outcomes, was more alignment in the district. So we want to move this year to gathering data on the presence of our evidence-based instructional strategies across our buildings, departments, and grade levels, grounded in our learner profile, and then also develop and implement a consistent walkthrough tool. So we've identified those strategies, we've learned about them, and then this year we're really going to gather evidence of the implementation of those across all of our classrooms in the school district. Our next goal is to reduce academic achievement gaps K-12 and engage students in the process of reviewing opportunity and access to advanced courses at the high school level. Again, the week that we learned that we were going to be closed to in-person instruction for the rest of the year, I literally had a meeting with Kristen Robbins and Craig McMillan at the high school and Jill Abraham, our chief academic officer, to go through some of this data. And again, everything changed, but that data is still there. We're still working on it. One of the things we did this year was really assess opportunities for extracurriculars and gathered that data and found that we have very good participation across the board. But also we know we need to really reduce some of those academic achievement gaps, and we need to talk with our students about access and opportunities and what we can do to support that. So we'll continue in that area. Using data is really important, something we've been working on. So we want to implement, especially in the area of mental health. So we want to implement supports in the area of mental health for students, staff, and parents, leading to an increase in grit literacy on Panorama. So last year we implemented Panorama as a tool to assess our students' social emotional literacies. And one of the areas we're seeing where we need to do some work is in the area of grit or perseverance. And so we want to implement supports in that area. And we've already begun working on what that will look like. We had started out thinking that we were going to be looking at a long-term facility plan. Ms. Mitchell mentioned that the facilities team hasn't met. Coronavirus and the loss of revenue has caused us to place a pause on that. And we know we may need to shift or put that work down the road, but we still need a master maintenance plan. And so we're taking this goal and moving it more toward developing that master maintenance plan and then begin to implement as our budget allows. We do not want to let our buildings go into disrepair or not to maintain important functions of our building that cost you more money later. And so we'll shift from engaging the community in a long-term facility plan to more of a master maintenance plan during this year. Moving to opening doors that lead to flexible, expansive future opportunities. We continue to have curriculum review as one of our goals, keeping it prominent. We want to make sure that we implement a protocol to ensure consistent, aligned implementation of the curriculum and incorporate the learner profile into all curriculum work. That kind of goes to the first goal that I talked about, which is making sure, tracking our use of instructional strategies, but then also making sure our curriculum is implemented vertically and horizontally. So it shouldn't matter what elementary school you go to, that your reading and your math instruction is consistent. We love the personality and the differences that our teachers bring and how they deliver, but we know what students learn needs to be consistent. And so we'll work to that. And our curriculum coordinator, Dr. Colleen Boyle, will be very instrumental in helping us with that as well. We want to incorporate the coordinator of curriculum and gifted, the coordinator of special education, and our middle school assistant principal and technology integration coach into the current structures. Just as a reminder, we had a couple of positions at central office, and Dr. Boyle will be basically taking up those two positions and doing some of the work of a third position. So we've reduced that administrative staff there. Her title is coordinator of curriculum and gifted, but she's also doing all the data and assessment work, which is usually two different jobs. So we, again, got a great person in Dr. Boyle. The coordinator of special education is something that we've talked about in the district really since I arrived. It's something that parents ask about for a number of years, and we finally have decided we need to move forward with that as we continue to encounter the social emotional needs of students and more mental health identifications. Having additional support for our staff and our parents, we think, will be very important. Our middle school assistant principal we hired a couple weeks ago. When I came on board, the sixth grade students had arrived at the middle school, and during that first year, the teachers at the middle school and many of the parents reached out about support for Mr. Cottle. Having been a middle school principal, trying to juggle all of that alone is quite a task. And so we decided to try to see how test the waters. And I want to thank Ms. Brooke Smith, who fulfilled the role as as an intern in that role for the last 2 years. What she helped us to see was that we definitely needed an additional person at the middle school. She wanted to go back to the classroom, which I told her, it's a win for me if you want to be a middle school assistant principal, and it's a win if you want to be an intervention specialist. So she's, want to thank her for her service over the last 2 years. She decided to go back to the classroom. So we'll be bringing on Ms. Raquel Armstrong. We're excited about having her join us. And we just talked about Mr. Fisher. Speaking of technology, the next goal, this year it was execute year 1 technology plan. Next year is execute year 2 of our technology plan. And the big component there will be implementing our one-to-one environment K-12 with innovative teaching strategies, again, connected to our learner profile. The third theme we have is to leverage and grow our vital community relationships. We want to continue to engage students in experiential learning and exploration outside of the school setting with community partners. I will share our coordinator of experiential learning, Mr. Steve Shapiro. I've had to ask him to go into a classroom to teach social studies for 3 periods a day, so he will not have as much time to do this as he did in the past. Again, part of our reduction, our hiring freeze, but he will continue as best he can with the time that he has while he's also teaching. So appreciate his positive attitude there as well. I shared with the board a couple weeks ago 2 pages of just second semester experiences that he was able to bring to students. So I think it was a single space 2 pages of things. So we're going to miss some of that next year, but he will keep working at that. And then we also want to develop professional learning experience to teach for our teachers to maximize their skills at bringing experiential learning into the classroom. And then our final theme is to develop a high performing team. And I would say it's the 4th one on the list, but it's really foundational. Everything that we do is about the people that we have and delivering our services to students. So we want to continue to define clearly our Bexley learning culture in order to accompany the strategic plan and learner profile. It's not separate work. It's just more taking all of the pieces of our work and really saying, okay, what is the culture that we're trying to create and how do we get there? So I want to work on doing that this year. And then also utilizing additional technologies and platforms to provide differentiated learning to both staff and to parents. That's always a part of what we want to do for students. Through our special education survey that Ms. McMaster's talked about in April, one of the things we identified was there's some additional parent education, and we want to find some different ways of doing that. We found that these Zoom meetings may be a great alternative to always in person. And so we'll be looking at how we can use technology. So that's a big, tall order for a year, but we believe that we can accomplish it even in our current environment and moving forward. So that was a lot. Are there any questions about the goals for next year?
Dr. Miller, I had a question about the experiential learning position, and I know that you've highlighted for the board in your Friday reports what Mr. Shapiro, what great work that he did. Especially being a new position and directly working with the students. Could you highlight maybe for the meeting what some of the things that a couple of the things that he accomplished this last semester and this last year, experiential learning, maybe just a couple of examples so everyone knows what his job is.
Okay. You put me on the spot just a little bit, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I can grab it here. I can grab it here hopefully very quickly.
I know you gave us so many that as you were saying, it was pages and pages, but it's hard to choose out.
So you don't have to answer that question specifically, but so his role was specifically to be able to get students and take them out of the classroom, connect them with business leaders in the community to show them very experience related jobs, yes. Learning opportunities. So this wasn't something to where he's sitting in an office and sending things. He's taking the students, working with the students directly, right?
Right. So I can highlight some of the things.
Okay. I'm sorry not to put you on the spot.
That's okay. One of the things that he did, and this again, so everything we do is collaborative. None of us are working in isolation. We're meeting and we're working together. But he worked with our tech department and really a large group of people, our Bexley Education Foundation. And one of the big things was creating Bexley Connect, which I haven't looked at it recently. I know over 300 community members, not just Bexley, but Central Ohio people who have said, I would be willing to connect with students. I would be willing to connect with teachers. And we have utilized that resource. That's part of those partnerships we have to bring experiences to students. This is a really simple example, but one of our kindergarten classes at Maryland I believe it was Miss Phillips, her class wanted to learn to do a dance as a thank you. And so she said, I thought they would want to do cards and they wanted to do a dance. And so there was a professor of dance from OSU in Bexley Connect. We connected with her. She actually came out and worked with our students. So Bexley Connect was a really a big undertaking, and he was able to accomplish that in his first year. He's taken students to TEDx Columbus, to topics on human trafficking at the State House, which has led to students finding areas of interest that they want to pursue farther. He's taken students to a number of different roundtable events where they get to interact with other students, but also he's taken them to some of those types of events in the city that really are adults and business leaders, and he's getting our students into those experiences. I think that he's also worked with teachers about bringing how to bring some of this into the classroom. So really also a coach. It's great to say to people, we want you to do something, but then if you have no one to help you do it, it's hard. It's hard to take all that on. And so he's been really instrumental in finding those connections in the community. And Mr. Shapiro is a community member. He is a Bexley resident. His children graduated from Bexley schools. He has a great partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and they're looking at some internship type programs. So really a lot of career exploration and really interest exploration. And that's what we want our students to do. So one of the ways that they seek or build their future is to have opportunities to explore. And there are things that they can't explore in a classroom setting. And so this is really an enhancement to what we bring. But also he works K-12. So that's why I mentioned Mrs. Phillips. And then high school students going out to various experiences. So again, he will continue to do this work. It will be on a little bit of a diminished scale, but once again, going back to that commitment to review this, we're really hoping to get everybody back into their normal places in a year.
That was fantastic for being put on the spot by me. So, but I wanted to make sure that because I know we have a lot of people watching that what that position is. It's a position that is connecting and meeting and being directly involved with students and helping teachers and helping things move along, and to give examples of not just sitting in the classroom and looking at, everyone's going to a 4-away go away college, but seeing maybe there are some things out there that they can learn from such a rich diversity of jobs and experiences that are present in our community. So, and how it fits into the strategic plan. That was something that when we did the strategic plan, that was something that our community really wanted, and he took that role and ran with it. And so how it fits into kind of assessing that in our third year of our strategic plan, that appears to be something that's really hit the nail on the head.
One of the other things he's done is we did some job embedded professional development for credit through Ashland University, and there were a number of things that were happening. One of the things I'm most proud of is how our district has become very much a learning organization, and teachers stepping up to lead book studies and to do other things. But specifically in his role, he taught what's called a Modern Learners course, and then he's running two sections of that course currently. So this week and next week, he's running 2 additional courses, all about 21st century learning. So he continues to, just as our other coaches are and other teachers, provide professional development for colleagues into the summer. So.
Okay.
Well,
awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Can I jump in and say one thing really quick? I do feel like it was a really successful interview with Dr. Weinstock and Dr. Weinstock that he facilitated during the distance learning period. So I think it's just important to recognize that it wasn't even just the first through March. He rallied and came up with something super relevant. And I thought it was a nice transition because, City Council did something with them. We're addressing parents. And then the kids had an opportunity to have something that was a little bit different than or just a different opportunity than what the City Council offered. So I thought I know that was really well received.
Thank you for bringing that up again, because I wasn't fully prepared to talk about all this, which is okay. He, throughout distance learning, had regularly scheduled webinars and opportunities for students and staff to log in and as you said, talk to the Drs. Weinstock. I think he had someone from the museum. So there were a number of opportunities to connect over that period as well. So you're right. He didn't just sit back and say, well, I can't do this now. He figured out a way. And that's what 21st century is, and is learning how to pivot when the environment changes. So great model for that.
Thank you. I certainly agree. It's an impressive and aggressive plan, and I really appreciate all your work on it. Does anybody else have any other questions for Dr. Miller?
Real quick, Dr. Miller, what grade level will Mr. Shapiro be teaching?
He'll be teaching 6th grade next year.
They're going to be super lucky to have him as a social studies teacher.
Yes, they are. Yeah. 3 sections of 6th grade social studies.
So it's Victoria. I have a question back on the certified staff changes, and it's something that I just want to point out. It was a question that I had that Dr. Miller answered for me as we were preparing for this board meeting, and sometimes I remember that things that I needed to have the question answered, and Dr. Miller provided me the answer that it can be helpful in the community. And I just wanted to point out that the new middle school math teacher, we do have a hiring freeze on. And that's a replacement. And so the hiring freeze has an exemption when there's somebody who has retired. And so that's why we can hire that math teacher who otherwise, if it was just additive, we would have not been able to do that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Ms. Parrs. You're correct. This is a replacement of a position that was vacated because we had another open position due to a resignation earlier in the year. And so it is not a new position.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Miller? All right, then I would like to have a motion to approve items 4B through G.
So moved.
Thank you. And a
Second.
Thank you. This is a personnel these have personnel manners. So Mr. Smith, will you please do roll call for us?
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Barno,
Yes.
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden.
Yes. Thank you. So that motion carries. Moving on to item 5 in our agenda, Mr. Smith, would you please give us the treasurer's report?
Certainly. Of course, after 2 meetings, I've taken up quite a bit of time talking about the finances, so I think tonight should be relatively short. So the monthly financials, 5B, is up, and this is again for May. And one thing I'd like to point out, at the very bottom, there's a footnote that says these forecasts month by month are based on the November 2019 forecast. We just approved a forecast in May, and it's kind of it'd be kind of silly to maybe compare ourselves to something I just updated in May, especially with the revenues. But so that there are some significant changes. But after June, I'll provide a report that compares us to the May forecast, and then again back to the November. Okay. The one thing I would like to point out is the line 1.035 is the unrestricted state grants and aid, a negative or a variance of $183,000, and that's the state foundation program line. So as we've talked several times about this already, we have, by the state's standards or payments, have been overpaid. And will be changed our funding by $635,000. So we just started seeing that happen this second payment in May. But by the end of this month, when you look at this report at the end of June, you'll see a variance of about $635,000 when you compare the November 19 forecast. But the other document I'll show you should be relatively a zero variance because we've updated the forecast to reflect that difference. That's really the only thing I wanted to highlight was that the state has started revising their funding formula to us, and that's the variance there. Everything else, especially in the revenue, is kind of been updated within the 5-year forecast. But again, this just reflects the November 19 forecast and budgeting. Okay. The other item that I draw your attention to is item 5D, the Bexley Public Library 2020-21 tax budget. just like school districts, libraries have to submit a proposed tax budget to the county, and the library kind of fits under the Ohio Revised Code of being a school district library. Their books are not with us, but best way to say it is their taxing authority lies with us. So if they would ever have a ballot issue or a debt issue, the board kind of goes through the motions of approving that ballot issue, but same thing with their tax budget. It's customary for in this situation, a Board of Education to approve that. Again, these budgets, these revenues don't flow through the district. That's all I had. If there were questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Smith, can you just refresh my recollection on when we will start to see, when do we get our next income tax?
Yep. Our next income tax payment will be July 31st. So
Okay.
I won't have an update until the August board meeting on that.
Okay.
And that'll be telling to kind of see what's there or what's not there.
That's payments for the first of the year through, or is it a quarterly?
It's a quarterly payment, so that will reflect employers who submit payroll withholdings for the school district income tax. That will include March, April, and May. I'm believing, yeah, March, April, May, those 3 months of payroll. But the big piece is the individual withholdings or filings, because that's been extended to July 15th. That'll just vary depending on how our community as a whole is filed. If they've waited till July 15th, we won't get some revenue there. So I've said before, we'll probably have a better understanding at the October payment, the next payment after July.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
I had one. You mentioned this at the last meeting, Mr. Smith, about the delay in the property tax collections. Is that, do you have any updates on that?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Barno. I don't have any word on the Franklin County submission, but there was another county that submitted the same request to delay, well, not exactly the same, but to delay their reappraisal with the state.
Mm-hmm.
That was denied by the Ohio Tax Commissioner. So if we're using that as a guide, that might be beneficial to us, that request from Franklin County would be denied. And again, this is just an update on our property taxes. When property taxes values are raised, we don't get additional money for that, with the exception of inside millage. So there was, that was factored into the forecast this May, because at the time did not feel that that update would happen. So as of right now, no official word, but there's been some decisions already made within the state that might be to our financial favor as a district.
And I'm sorry, so normally we would get those payments when?
I'm sorry, with maybe let me ask a clarifying question. Are you asking about the value updates or the payments from the county?
The payments, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's my fault.
So no, that decision has been granted by the Ohio Tax Commissioner, that payments will be delayed, but or extended, I should say. We'll still be able to request the money from the county in a normal time frame, but the amount of money that's available probably won't be as much as we're used to.
Okay.
So I won't have any report in July, because I might have a first little report to see how we're doing, but it'll be less, I'm sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sorry I wasn't clear.
Any other questions from Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith, when we had that big, financial downturn in 08 and 09, did the same thing happen with the property taxes as well? Like where there was a delayed payment?
I don't know. I wasn't in Franklin County at the time. I've been talking with other treasurers who have been around a little bit longer than I have. I believe it's happened in Ohio. And there's been some precedent set with that, but I
So
don't.
not the first rodeo for Franklin County.
Yeah, I don't know specifically if that happened in Franklin County or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve items 6B through D?
So moved.
Marley, I think we're on 5. Not 6.
Oh, you're right.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Minio. Can I have, I've been moving around. Can I have a motion to approve items 5A through E? Thank you.
I'll so move again.
Thank you.
And I'll second for that one.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. All right, we are up to our staff and student learning reports. Our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Abraham, do you have any comments for us?
I do. Good evening. I have 3 items for your review this evening from staff and student learning. First, you have before you 6B, which is for the purchase contract agreement for textbooks to support geometry and honors geometry students. This purchase includes not only textbooks for our 250 students taking these courses, but also access to online resources for up to a period of 6 years and the accompanying teacher resources. Additionally, you have before you 6C, which is the K-12 Fine Arts curriculum, and I remind you that includes music, visual arts, and theater, as well as 6D, which was the K-12 physical education curriculum for review. And if you remember at our previous meeting, these curriculums were presented to you by our teacher coordinators, Bill Manchester, Alex Jordan, and Ashley Price. And that was your first reading. So these would be before you this evening for your second reading and your final approval.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Abraham?
I just have one quick one, Miss Abraham. You said that with the geometry course book, you get 6 years of online access. Does that include like any sort of license updates? Would we be guaranteed to include that? It does? Okay.
It would stay current.
That's a good deal.
That is.
Okay, great. Any other questions on 6A through D or B through D now? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Abraham. I'm excited about these offerings. And thank you again to your the teacher leaders who were instrumental in bringing them to us. They did great work. Can I have a motion to approve 6B through D?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, so, sorry, need some water. Moving on now to one of the more major topic for our conversations tonight. We are set to discuss as a board items 7A, which is, can you pull up, Mr. Pettit, there we go, our expenditure reductions. And as part of this, we'll also be discussing the resolution that would come with this. So I hope everybody, I know in previous meetings, people have had difficulty or said that they couldn't see what we were talking about. So if you can't see it on our screen for some reason, you can go to Board Docs and it's linked there. And you can find Board Docs by looking at the link on our school website under Board of Education. So hopefully everybody sees what we were talking about there. And I think given the amount of people in our audience tonight, it's important to have a bit of a summary of what got us here. So just to do that and back up for a moment, I've written down some thoughts and I appreciate all of your patience with me as I'm not as great of extemporaneous speaker as Dr. Miller is. So I find that I have to write it down to make sure I've covered the stuff that I want to cover. So last month, the governor cut our revenue we received by the state by $635,000, as Mr. Smith just mentioned. So we're projected to have another cut from the state for the next school year as well. And although we don't know exactly how much that is yet, early indications tell us that it will be a similar amount. Additionally, we received 20% of our revenue from the Bexley income tax. We were just discussing that a few minutes ago with Mr. Smith. Again, we don't know exactly how much of a drop to expect in that, but we know our income must be negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, given the sharp rise in unemployment and the drop of stock market values, things that happened in the 2008 recession when we saw up to a 20% decline in our income tax revenue in 2010. So this has created a situation where we need to give the administration guidance on how to proceed in operating the district with over $1 million less revenue. As you can see in the document, that's the ballpark we're looking toward. So to that end, we asked our administration to look through our expenses and provide us reports on what could be cut from our budget. We thought that it was important and the most prudent thing to do to request reports that were broad. So they left nothing out, so that we could get a complete picture of our options. We didn't view this as a document that would show us everything to cut. We just wanted to have a complete picture and leave no stone unturned. So Dr. Miller cut her budget first and then met with every department head and each submitted their proposed cuts. So they looked at department and building operations, supplemental contracts for staff and administrators, staffing in general, and our extracurricular and co-curricular offerings. The administration provided us with that information on May 18th at our special meeting, and we began to discuss the appropriate amount that should be on our resolution for today's date. The two priorities that we set were, one, the academic success of our students, and two, the retention of our excellent staff. So we as a board received an outpouring of responses to the budget cuts discussed in the May 18th meeting. And I want to take a moment here to thank everybody who reached out to us for the thoughtful and constructive information and opinions that you shared with us. We have carefully reviewed and internalized those personally and now seek to discuss them as a board so we can make a collective decision to direct the administration on how much to cut from our budget, given the financial realities of COVID-19. So that's how we got to where we are tonight. I'm going to start the discussion myself since I can. And I will ask each of the board members to give their opinions in like turns so we can begin to have a meaningful conversation on the directions. So given the harsh reality that this pandemic has presented us with, I look at the document that our administration has given us, and I'm impressed and pleased with three things. First and foremost is that we're supporting our students' academic and social emotional growth. We have focused our resources on student learning, relationships with teachers, and co-curricular and extracurricular offerings. If we are allowed by the health authorities to do so, all arts, music, and athletic programs will remain. The only student programming that will be paused for this coming year is the 20 minutes 3 times a week that we offered Spanish to our elementary students. While I'm disappointed with that, knowing the very complex rules around teacher licensure and union contracts that we have to honor and our budgetary realities, I am able to accept that for this 1 year. I want to note that on the resolution, as our previous resolution, it specifically enumerates that it's only for this 1 year. So we will revisit all of these things for our next school year. Secondly, I want to applaud the administration for their resourcefulness and creativity and looking for alternative resources to address our budget shortfall. Specifically, they were able to secure a $250,000 impact grant from the BEF to cover the cost of our one-to-one devices for this year and a commitment to raise the money for the following 2 years. I want to specifically thank our BEF. They have really stepped up. This is an incredible ask, and we are feeling very, very fortunate that we have this organization to help us in this effort. It's important for our distance learning. It's important for our learning period, and we just feel very fortunate that we have such an organization in our community to support our schools. So additionally, I want to thank our administration for realizing and being creative with the fact that our Permanent Improvement Fund, which is a separate, this is kind of technical, but it's a separate fund from our general fund that we're discussing tonight. That fund had money that could properly be used on things currently in our general fund, and that saved us nearly $200,000 in this budget. Third, I like that we're able to do all of this while retaining our exceptional staff, both teachers and administrators. And on this, I want to say I've heard from some community members who believe that we should be cutting our staff or reducing their salary. And I want to address this for now just by saying that pre-COVID-19, we passed our levy with a high percent of voters in favor. And although we did not, it didn't create a surplus in our funding, it did put us on solid ground to continue to pursue the mandates of our strategic plan, a plan that was created in a year-long process with input from all of our stakeholders. And the plan that we heard updated tonight, which, as you could all hear, is very impressive and innovative and works to the level that I think our community expects of us, which is a very high level. So in order to faithfully follow the plan, we knew that we needed to redefine some of the administrative roles, which we did to align our system and better serve all of our students. We also added the Director of Student and Staff Operations, Dr. Harley Williams, to work on our human resource needs. Let me just assure you that his work for our district more than pays for itself in the savings and systems that he is directing. As a former labor and employment attorney, I'm very thankful we have him on board. So our realignment of administrators and hiring of exempt staff has also allowed our teachers to learn and grow in new and productive ways while being supported with administrators who can manage all the complex pieces of running a fully aligned district. I do not believe that we are top heavy. I have personally reviewed all the administrator job descriptions and feel they are necessary to meet the ambitious goals of our districts that our community demands. This is challenging work and has become exponentially more so during the pandemic. Every administrator is working long hours to ensure the success of our students, and I believe they should earn a fair wage to do that. Not one of our administrators earn in the top category for their position, either in Franklin County or statewide among our comparable districts. And in fact, several are paid less than some of our teachers. We are judicious in our spending and have carefully crafted an exceptional team while not paying top dollar to do so. This is not to say that if more revenue losses come upon us, that we will not look to our staffing again. We will have to do that. But given the current expenditure reductions given to us here tonight, I believe those are the best fit for our first cut for the reasons I previously stated. So those are my thoughts. I appreciate your patience in letting me read them to you tonight, and I open it up for discussion for the rest of our board members. You'll have to unmute if you're going to jump in.
Sorry, I'll go ahead and kind of piggyback on a lot of what you said, Ms. Snowden. Other than Ms. Snowden, I've been on the board the longest of the 5 of us, or at least had the most experience. Not that that makes me an expert, but part of the budget discussion, and I also made some bullet points so I don't lose my place, but part of this budget discussion is involved the board members, Dr. Miller, Mr. Smith, the administrators, the teachers that have worked so hard, not only dealing with the the distance learning and the issues that came with that, but also the budget constraints that we were given at the end of the year that we counted on for the year. That's the reality of the situation. And I know everyone, because of the text on the weekend, phone calls, emails, that everyone is doing their best for our students, as our resolution said. That's our number one priority. And frankly, to imply or suggest or to even directly say otherwise, frankly, is misguided. It's not based in fact, and it's not something that I take too kindly of for my fellow board members and for everyone that's been working so hard on this. I know that, especially for my board members, and I'll speak specifically on our behalf, this isn't our full-time job. We took these jobs, we requested to be elected, and we're fortunate enough to be elected to represent our community. A lot of us have full-time jobs, have families, have other obligations outside of this. And the time that we spend outside of this meeting is never seen, and it's never been seen. So for my fellow board members, I congratulate them for the time and the effort and the work and the extra time that they've spent, and especially not to diminish anyone else, but Ms. Snowden's efforts and time that she spent. Countless emails responding, meetings, phone calls, meetings with Dr. Miller. So again, to suggest that we haven't looked at this closely or just rubber stamps or what have you is really misguided. I think it's important also that when you go to social media, I won't mention any specific sites, but or you get second or third-hand information from someone, and I've seen quite a bit of it. It's lost on what work that we've been doing and what actual facts are out there that support what decisions that we're trying to make that have involved multiple people and not just a couple of people. And not the board rubber stamping things. This is not only on the budget issue, but on other issues. For instance, on the busing issue, the multiple emails we get that are contain constant misinformation. Now, no one wants to make these cuts, and we don't have programs in our district or classes or extracurricular programs that are just fluff. We do those because those are enriching to our students. That's the number one priority that I can say, at least my 6 years on the board, and I would venture to say before that and into the future, that's the number one thing. But the cuts have to come from somewhere. So we have to figure out where. And it's to say or suggest or again, even imply that this district doesn't care about the arts, I think is way off the mark and again, misguided. For what we've done for the arts in this district, I think has been exemplary and leads the state, if not the country, in some of the things that we do. Just look at the programs that we have in our theater and our music. But there are points that we have not only extracurriculars, but administrative issues that we have to look at. And that's, if you look at the document that's attached, that's what we've done. What is especially troublesome to me is when people say, well, you just need to reduce administrative staff. I could go down the administrative staff, and as Ms. Snowden pointed out, we look at these very closely, and as was mentioned in a public comment, or what Ms. Mitchell has constantly brought up, and Ms. Powers too, what she's added with her financial background, and what Ms. Minio has added. We all look at these issues all the time. Dr. Williams, for instance, we hired him. He not only handles HR, and what company that has more than 300 employees and 2,500 students doesn't have an HR director? Not only does he do all of our HR, but he also oversees the safety, helps oversee the athletics, and don't let it be lost on you of how much time he spends in doing that. A coordinator of curriculum and gifted that we hired. We hired an administrator that's going to be doing the job of what 2.5 people were doing before. Experiential learning, we talked about that earlier in the meeting, the overwhelming success and the direct work with students. That's not even an administrative position, but even if you want to characterize it as that's something that has been directly working with students. Our special ed coordinator that we recently approved as a job position is desperately needed, and I would dispute anyone that said that we don't. Our tech integration coach, which is a teaching position you heard earlier from Mr. Fisher, that talked about what he is going to be doing and working with the students. Our middle school principal, to have a middle school principal that will work directly with the students. Again, the implication that administrators just simply push paper is misguided, not kind of, definitely misguided. The administrators go away. If we cut administrators and cut their time or cut their pay that's been suggested, this falls then on the teachers. I would invite anyone to email me, john.barno@bexley.us, to let me know what administrators they think are expendable or overpaid. They work tirelessly throughout the year. They're not 9-month employees. They work tirelessly throughout the year. And not only do they sometimes work directly with the teachers and students, but they also help coordinate our teachers. And as was mentioned earlier, working with our teachers for curriculum review that we've been able to handle and handle our alignment, that as a board that we charged when Dr. Miller came on board to align it, and they've been helping do that. And I have a lot of notes here, so I'm sorry, I might be going on too long, but I think it's important to note this information. I'm not diminishing the music or the arts or athletics at all, and the anecdotes and the information and what people have shared with us. I'm not diminishing that at all, but it's important for our community to get the information. I know Dr. Miller and Ms. Snowden have met and talked with a number of people just in the time from our May 18th meeting. That's why we had that May 18th meeting, so people can come to us and give us input and ask questions. And that's what's been done. We've been very transparent throughout when this first hit. That's why we had the emergency meeting. That's why we're meeting today to go through of what we talked about at that May 18th meeting and all the feedback we got. And frankly, I was quite disappointed at some of the way that some handled this, and the emails and the posts of accusations and uninformed posts and emails that we received that I saw out there before reaching out, before even providing any information. Without even asking for information. I don't mean to pick on anybody, and I don't know who started this, to say that we have a branding ambassador as an administrator, which is completely false, is, again, misguided at best. I would ask that as our resolution states, we have 2 priorities: the academic success of our students and the retention of, or 3 priorities, the retention of our current staff and to preserve the general cash balance. Number 1 on that is our student success. And another thing that I saw out there is that the Board of Education isn't educators. I would ask you to go to ohioschoolboards.org and look at what a school board does. We're not educators. We hire experts and educators to do the jobs that we're asking them to do. We approve contracts. We hire the superintendent and treasurer. We set goals. We approve budgets. We're fiscal stewards for the district, and we pass policies. But then it's up to the administrators and the teachers and the staff to implement that. So to say that because we're not educators, and I believe Ms. Minio does have a background in education, if people would like to get that information as well, that is, I'm sure, available, and I'm sure she would like to talk. We could be happy to talk to you about that. What we do as a board, I think is a very important work. This is difficult for everyone. This is difficult to make cuts on things that we believe are part of what we feel is important for our students, but it has to come from somewhere. So in the end, I know I've gone on quite a long time, and I'm usually not this wordy at board meetings, but I would ask each of you, and I know that our board members and our administration is very accessible. Reach out to us, ask an email, ask about information. I'm happy to, like I've done in the past, send me an email, john.barno@bexley.us. Send me an email, send me your phone number. I would be happy to talk to you. Now, I'm not the spokesperson for the board, but all of us have worked so hard and spent so much time in the background, getting information, looking at charts, asking questions from Mr. Smith and Dr. Miller and a lot of other people. Contact me. I'll be happy to talk to you and provide you with information, because with so much information out there, misinformation out there, and people getting second and third hand information and then posting or telling someone that this is what's going to happen, or sending emails that are completely misinformed, is not constructive at all. In fact, I would ask that if you go back and look at our board agendas, our meetings, our May 18th meeting, that you'll get a lot of information that will answer the questions that you have. But again, I'm not speaking for anyone else. I'm not a spokesperson for the board, but I'm happy to do that as an elected official. So with that said, it's difficult work. I commend my fellow board members and the administration, and I would challenge anyone to tell me what administrators are either expendable or overpaid. And I would also ask that those of you out there watching would take a look at what we've taken most of our expenditures and what we've reduced our budget on, and it is not directly teacher related. And I would commend also that our administration was able to retain every single one of our staff and teachers, which if you look online, there are many districts that can't say that, most districts that can't say that. So that's the end of my speech, so to speak, but I again wanted to commend my fellow board members and the administration for being creative and looking at every angle that we possibly could to get where we are, to make these unfortunate decisions, but difficult as they are, we have to go forward with them. So again, I wanted to make sure that I covered all of the areas that I think is important to note and to, again, stick up and commend my fellow board members as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Verno. I'm wondering if it would be a good idea. We have all obviously had time to look at the expenditure reduction that is there that Ms. Pettit has up. And I'm wondering if maybe it would make sense to have Dr. Miller go through those briefly. If anybody has any questions specifically, you can ask them now, after she's done. Is that all right with everybody to do it that way? Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Dr. Miller. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to start again, we don't want to say no to anything. Over the 3 years I've been here, we've added a number of courses and programs for students, and to think about not being able to do something is not what we want, but we have worked very hard, and I want to thank my team and teachers as well for the hard work that we've done to get to what we think is the least impactful on student learning, and as we've said, retaining our staff. You'll notice that the biggest area of reductions comes in department and building operations at $849,000 and a little bit more. Most of that we've taken from business operations. Business operations would be, think maintenance on our buildings, electricity, gasoline, insurance, liability insurance, those types of things. So we were able to reduce the general fund budget for operations by $415,000. We are still going to expend $198,000 on some things we believe need to be done, but we will be able to use our permanent improvement dollars for that. But it still reduces the general fund expenditure, which is the fund that's being impacted by the loss of state revenue. So there are some items that we will still need to do. Again, we don't want our buildings and our grounds to fall into disrepair. So $198,000 will go to permanent improvement, but an overall reduction of $415,000. Technology, we're showing a $200,000 reduction. And again, that's thanks to the BEF and their support of helping us to launch our one-to-one initiative. So can't say thank you to them enough. That is a partnership that we value and are so grateful to have all the time, but especially in these times. Student services, there are no reductions in that budget.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure that we're clear to our public because we have the technology that you just mentioned and the $200,000. And then we also have down at the bottom the $250,000 that they're actually giving us as an impact grant. That my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this technology of $200,000 savings is for expenses that we thought we were going to have to incur in the old system. But since we have the money for new one-to-one, with BEF, we'll be saving that 200,000. Is that correct?
That is true. I sort of lumped that all together. I'm sorry.
That's good. I
I talked about it a lot. So yeah, so there are some things we're definitely able to, oh my goodness. There are some things we're definitely able to, that's my mom calling me. Sorry. Some things we're definitely able to not do because of going to one-to-one. So there's some replacement things that we won't need to purchase and a few other things. And I would need Mr. Pettit to be specifics, but there's still a reduction in that budget. But again, because of the support of the BEF, that allows us to do some of those things.
Right.
Again, student services, this is special education, education for our English language learners, education for, with our 504, services that we provide, nursing services, et cetera. You see no reduction there. That is a good thing. We want to try to keep those expenses as close to the same as we can, although remember these are programs that are guided by state and federal laws. And there's also something called maintenance of effort, where we cannot reduce our expenditures from one year to the next. We'd have to have a significant reason to do that, like a reduction of students or something, and we don't. And so no reductions is not a problem. That means we're just continuing to maintain and be thoughtful with our costs. But again, these are services often to our most vulnerable students, and so it's important that those remain in place. Departments that administer district programming. So this includes communications, curriculum, community engagement, and student and staff operations. We were able to reduce those budgets by $198,000. This has to do with reducing professional development for administrators and, unfortunately, for teaching staff, reducing equipment purchases, eliminating some contracted services. We used a screening tool as part of our application process, so we are eliminating that. This does include a reduction in payment for AP tests, not a reduction in AP courses. We looked at not completely eliminating that benefit to students, but to retaining a pot of money of $20,000 to support students with financial need. I've talked with Ms. Robbins at the high school. She's identified $15,000 in her building budget that she's going to be able to put toward those tests. It's our commitment to come up with a really good plan to support our students. We do not want any student to not take AP classes because of this. And if we are able, I would say even if we are able to reduce some other areas, we'd be able to reinstate some of that money. But based on enrollments for next year, our AP test expenditure would have been $93,000 for next year. That's about like hiring a teacher. So we're looking at, again, places that don't cause us to have to lose staff. It's a disappointment to do that. It's something that we love as a service here, but that was something we did look at. And of course, shared with the board in lots of presentations. If we move down to supplementals are contracts that we pay in addition to our regular salary. And we have a number of supplementals, and those are very important to helping us achieve our goals. But there were some that we felt that perhaps we could let go. One would be eliminating 6 assignments. So at the secondary level, if a teacher teaches a 6-period class out of our 7-period day, they would be paid an additional stipend of $3,000 per semester. And so we're eliminating those for next year. There's one exception at the middle school. Mr. Cottle was able to have 2 teachers take on a 1-semester 6th assignment, and that allowed us not to, it saved a full teaching position. So those are going to go forward, but we're not, in order to offer additional courses, we're not doing that for 1 year. There was only 1 6th assignment that was going to happen for a semester at the high school, and I'm hopeful that Ms. Robbins will be able to work some magic and still figure out a way to offer the course. 6th grade camp, these are stipends that we pay staff to go to camp with our 6th graders. While we love 6th grade camp, overnight camp in a COVID environment is very up in the air for fall, and we did not want to incur expenses and put down deposits that we couldn't get back, so we felt that we would need to pause on that for this year. Grade chairs at the elementary level. Secondary level, we have department chairs. At the elementary, we had grade level chairs. And it's important that this work happen. And so we will assign the duty of organizing those meetings to the building principal. So they will take on an additional duty. Curriculum stipend, because we have a curriculum coordinator now, we will not need to expend that stipend. We had area coordinators in our arts area. We mentioned the review of fine arts and PE, and we had teachers who were the coordinators of those programming. So looking at not having those for next year because we just completed those tasks this year. We have a local professional development committee that is required in state law for school districts. All of us who are certified, licensed employees have to renew our licenses on a regular basis, and we have to have a plan in place. Each district has a committee of teachers and administrators who review those plans and approve those. And they do receive, each member of that committee receives a stipend, but the administrators who serve on it would no longer receive a stipend. And so there would be no longer stipends or supplementals for administrators after that. And then we always have to pay a retirement on all payroll, regardless of whether it's regular salary or supplemental. And so there's a savings there of about $8,000. This is not a big number, 66,700, but I'll reference what one of our community members referenced, and Ms. Mitchell asked us to leave no stone unturned, and that's what the board asked us to do, and that's what we did. So it's not a big number, but it's something. Staffing, this was related to filling those internal positions. Again, prioritizing student learning, we felt that we needed 3 elementary sections. And so we filled those from within, and also our French. So we did not eliminate the staff member. So we fill the French, but we don't really save any money there. But it allowed us to offer what students asked for, which was going to need to be an increase. And so there's no additional expenditure for that. And then you can see Mr. Smith spoke earlier about Joan Roberts going to a 0.8 contract. And so those staffing with benefits saved $184,000 and a little bit more. And then the $250,000 donation from the Education Foundation, again, it's not a savings, but it reduces money we would have had to have spent from the general fund. So this gets us to $1.35 million. We're facing close to $1.3 million in state revenue loss. And so as the board asked, how would we get to that number? These were some ways, again, painful, difficult decisions, but we're living in times where we have to make some difficult decisions. You will notice art, music, athletics are not on here because we do not intend to eliminate any of those things. If there's any reduction, it would be because we're not permitted to offer those particular offerings. So just as we have not yet hired any of our fall coaches because we only learned on the 21st that there was a possibility of athletics in the fall. We're working with our BEA, our association, on how we would manage if we end up hiring the coaches and then we can't move forward with sports, just as we did with spring. You'll recall we paid our spring coaches at 50% because the seasons were canceled, but they had done work and we wanted to honor that, but also appreciated the ability to not pay those out in full since we had no athletic contests. So we're not planning to eliminate any extracurriculars, any music programs, but where we have uncertainties about what we will be able to do from a health and safety standpoint, we pause until we know we can move forward, and then we move forward with those.
Thank you. Can you clarify one thing for me? I think we just inadvertently left it off the expenditure notation, but under the the Department Building Operations, the superintendent's budget was also, I know that you trimmed your budget, and that was, I think, should be listed with communications, curriculum, community engagement, student staff operations.
I did trim my budget. I guess the reason we didn't list it there is my budget doesn't administer programs, specific programs, but yes, that budget, we just wrapped it into that $198,000. If I'm looking at Mr. Smith to see if he will nod to confirm that for me. But, that's all wrapped into there.
Okay, thank you. And then just also to make sure, because I know that there are a lot of questions about this, just to make sure I understand you correctly. the AP is part of this, reducing AP expenditures to $20,000, but now with Kristen's, it'll be $35,000, where it costs us 93. That is something that you're still trying to figure out the best way to do that. And in fact, so this is an important distinction I think to be made. When the board adopts the resolution, if and when we adopt this resolution that's proposed, it will only give you the dollar amount that we want it reduced by. So you still have the flexibility to, if you find other budget, like Kristen, or I've heard you float ideas of perhaps asking when students sign up for the AP classes, if they'd like assistance in paying for the test, they can opt in or opt out. And there may be other organizations that are willing to help with that. So all of that will be decided in the future. It's not being decided tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And if we were able to, so many things are in flux. If we were able to find some savings someplace else and keep something else funded at a higher amount, we would absolutely do that. The goal again is to keep as much in place programming wise for students, and also to keep our staff with us. So that again, none of this is easy. None of it is pleasant. Nobody wants to do any of this. We like saying yes, and we like adding opportunities for students, but that is an area that's a big expenditure. We were looking across the board as well, not just at any one level or particular area. So we will continue to work on ways to continue to support students with AP tests, but our commitment would be that any student who needs financial help, we're going to make sure we provide that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other questions for Dr. Miller? Or other statements board members would like to make?
So I can start with that. And excuse me, when we met on May 18th, one of the issues that we put out there was that one of the things that the board would be struggling with and seeking community input on was how conservative should we ask the superintendent to be with respect to spending and budgeting for next year, as against coming back to the community for additional levy dollars. And I had gotten a lot of input on that over the last couple of weeks, and I'm again really appreciative of the creative, thoughtful comments that I got back when I sought input from the community on that. My sense is that our community expects us to provide great stewardship of the dollars that we oversee, and we have really taken that seriously. And as we are saying a couple times in this meeting, trying to leave no stone unturned. I believe that our community really supported our schools once again when we passed the levy that was requested in the fall, and it was a big number, and we were all very, very happy that we as a community continued to support what's so important and what makes our schools so special. So it is my sense from community input that I had, and I'm just one member of the board, that our community is not really looking for us to come back right now or soon for another levy, and that our community appreciates that we are trying to find ways and asking our superintendent to find ways to be saving in terms of our budget for the coming year. I want to just talk maybe a little randomly just about a few of the points that are coming up. We've talked a little bit this evening about communication and how difficult it can be, and that there may have been, a failure on our part to get all of the information out so that people had 100% of the information. and we really do appreciate people coming back to us and, as Mr. Barno suggested, asking for details and information. We've had a lot of that, and we've been able to share details, and I think our community is understanding better what is and isn't being proposed by the leadership. As we, just as an aside, Ms. Snowden mentioned that we are looking at the possibility of social media going forward. And we're also looking at the possibility of in-person community, coffee meetings or whatever you might want to call those, so that so that there's an in-person opportunity to have conversations when we can do that again also. Not with the full board, because we're not allowed to do that, but with a couple of board members, because it's been my experience that conversation that isn't on social media or through email can be much more helpful at the end of the day in terms of everybody listening and everybody hearing each other. And so I'm looking forward to being able to do that. One of the things that I've heard a lot about is that the pause on some of these programs is really the same thing as just terminating it. I've spoken specifically with the superintendent about that specific issue, and I want to assure everybody that that's not what is intended. Now, there's certainly a couple things that may have been discussed before that might not last forever. Things do change, but that there would be a process that we would go through before anything became something more than this 1 year that we're talking about right now. And maybe some of these technology expenses that we're going to be able to save on, as an example, because of the generosity of the BEF and the one-to-one device initiative, we may be able to save those more permanently. And so that would be a great thing. But in terms of people's concerns about arts programming, for example, this pause does not mean that there's an effort to stop those. Flexibility is another thing that's come up a lot going forward. We have to be flexible. We're looking hard at what we can do with what we know right now. Ms. Snowden and Mr. Smith have talked about projections of income and projections of what our revenue is going to look like. We were surprised by the $635,000 cut that we got from the governor. And we had to react quickly. We don't know what that number will look like for next year. We do not know what the income tax reductions will be. We did, and I would commend Mr. Smith for his hard work in going back to see what happened in 2008 to 2010. And Ms. Snowden mentioned that we experienced a 20% reduction in 2010 on our income tax. Our community will have an impact from COVID-19, and it's our job to do our best, but to project those things and to make decisions with community input. But things will not, whatever we think is going to happen, it'll turn out to be a little different. And so flexibility has to be built into this. I've heard a lot about the AP testing question. I got a lot of creative input about it, and I've shared it with the superintendent. And I know a lot of the community input has been shared. Possibly we could do something where 2 students per family, two AP tests per student per family. There are lots of ways that I know the superintendent is listening to all these different creative ideas that are coming in about how could we best continue to pay for as much of the AP testing as our community would like. And, we didn't always pay for AP testing, but it's something that people have talked a lot about. And I know that flexibility and looking for ways to achieve the goals of our community as best we can while we are faithful stewards of the money that has been granted to our school district through the taxpayers, and doing our best to not overconserve, but also be reasonable in terms of what we are facing. One of my smart friends asked me, are are the cuts that are being considered driven by budget constraints, or are they driven by COVID limitations? And my answer to that is that as we look at with the superintendent how to save the $1,350,000 that we're talking about, it makes perfect sense to look at where we might not be able to provide programming and to try to go slow on whether or not we can provide those and not pay for them until we know for sure. And so with respect to the possibility that we'll only have a 0.7 orchestra teacher, that's really driven by those considerations. And as the superintendent has indicated, those decisions will be made based on the governor's orders, our wonderful Dr. Amy Acton's orders about health issues, and what we can do without any desire to not have a full slate of those kinds of offerings within the savings that have been put forth by the superintendent. And I was really pleased that we were able to see so much of the savings that we're looking for coming out of the business operations, technology, and administrative lines. That, you know, it's really the lion's share of where we're saving money. I did want to also note that we're moving some of the expenses from the operating fund, which is where the income tax and the state dollars are being reduced, both what numbers that we know and what numbers that we project, and $198,000 being moved into the PI fund, the Permanent Improvement Fund, which is for capital items, where those funds are property tax funds, and we don't anticipate the same kind of problem. I just want to let everyone know that I confirmed with Mr. Smith that there has been an increase in that fund budget to provide for additional cleaning, for example. So not only are we projecting that there are going to be needs for us to reduce because of income reductions, but we are also cognizant that going forward in the COVID era that we're in right now requires us to expend a little more on things like cleaning, the things that Dr. Harley Williams is looking at, figuring out how we open our buildings and how we keep our students safe and our teachers safe while they're here. I think that's, you know, I did want to touch on some of the things that the Bexley music parents had asked about, and I'd be happy to defer to Dr. Miller on that. But really, there were 4 things there. We've talked about the orchestra teacher, and I think there's been some discussion of the 4th and 5th grade band and orchestra piece. That's really driven by what we can do with our students. If the students are in person in the building, but can't go to the music room, and we can't have, you know, certain types of live instruction, the thought was to pause it until we can. Now, if we can do that, it's my understanding that the superintendent is considering taking the 0.7 orchestra teacher to a 1.0 and has plans for how to make that happen as we go along here. AP Music Theory, you know, suffice it to say that it's my understanding that there's a plan to offer that. And the middle school jazz program, the supplemental for that will be offered. And I'm grateful to the superintendent for creatively determining that if one of our existing teachers can't pick up or doesn't pick up the supplemental for that, that we would go to, for example, the Capital Music program to look for somebody there to do that for us, which I think is, somebody asked me in all of these conversations, are we partnering with Capital? And this is one of the ways that we can take advantage of a community resource if that helps us get over the hurdle. So I think that's what I've got right now, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. I appreciate that. I'm going to open the floor to others. I'm going to leave my seat for the minute. I realized when I walked in there were no lights on because this is so sunny, but it's about to get dark in my room. So I'm listening, but I'm going to go walk over to turn the lights on. Ms. Mitchell or Ms. Minio?
Ms. Snowden, I did have just a few thoughts, and I don't want to belabor some of the points that Mr. Barno made and Ms. Powers has made, but I would like to just point out, COVID-19 has sort of underscored the need for our board to find a way to create a resource for our community to get information. It's one of the things that, I heard when I was out campaigning, and Victoria can speak to this as well. And I know that we had already begun those conversations in our last retreat. And I appreciate, Ms. Snowden, you giving me the task to continue that work and that research, because, it's hard not to grow frustrated when you see, all the misinformation and, but then understanding that folks are frustrated because there's this fear of one more thing being taken away. And if there's a way for us to provide accurate, timely information, we do these meetings 12 months out of the year unless there's something else going on. But typically our community is not tuning in until it's something that, really sort of directly hits home for them. And so we need to find a way to be able to tell our story and tell it with the accurate and factual information, because really, what I heard and what I digested over the last several weeks from all of the emails and communication on the various issues was that people didn't have a way, our community didn't have a way to get the information correctly. If they didn't tune in and understand the context of the conversation leading up to COVID-19, there's a misconception that we've hired a bunch of administrators in the last several years, in the last 3 years. But if you really take a step back and look at all we've done is align many of our current administrative positions to match our strategic goals, but we didn't hire new administrators. In fact, there are multiple times that we've saved dollars. This notion that our administrators are high paid, despite the fact that we know for a fact, which is public record, that our superintendent is, or there are teachers that are paid higher than our own superintendent. Our administrative staff, our administrators could make more money if they were in classrooms. That's the reality. And yet this narrative that kind of takes hold because there's no one to fill that vacuum. There's no resource to clarify that for folks. And what I applaud our community is that they're asking for the information, and they're relying on the only resources that they have. So I do want to encourage our board to make that a priority for us to try to close that gap, so that we can make sure that our community has reliable, factual, and actual information when as we are weighing things as we go forward in this process. And like I said, I don't want to belabor some of the points that Mr. Barno made or Ms. Powers. We're always thankful for our community never hesitating to step up and share their thoughts and remind us what their values are. But I would like to encourage or remind our community that we share those same values. None of us would be here if that wasn't the case. And to be able to prioritize keeping people employed in this environment, I cannot underscore how vitally important and what a huge value that is to me personally, but to what I see in the marketplace right now of homes and families being ravaged by economic loss. And that we're able to do that. I was talking to a close friend who told me in her school district alone, they're losing intervention specialists and nurses in their schools. And I can't even fathom something like that being the case in this particular environment where things are so fluid and so many things at risk for students, that we're able to not even be having that conversation right now. And I think that might have been lost in the process of, people wanting to express how important this one thing or these several things of this one thing is to them. But our goal is never to take away, but to continue to enhance. But we are literally one of the top school districts in the state and one of the smallest. And we're small but mighty and doing a lot of really great things, despite this pandemic that no one could plan for. So again, I really want to encourage our board to make this a priority so that we can make sure that our communication piece, we've done a tremendous job making sure our community has information about what's happening in the district. But I do think from a level of authority from the Board of Education, if we can prioritize that so that the sorts of miscommunication and misinformation that Mr. Barno mentioned, and just sort of the misinformation that Ms. Powers talked about, we can kind of fill that gap. I would be excited to help lead that process, and I know that we're committed to doing it. So that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell, I just want to go back to one thing that you said, just to make sure I'm clarifying, that when you said that the superintendent's salary is less than some of our administrators.
Yeah.
So
can you explain that?
So
sure.
I mean, there's lots of different ways to look at it, per diem, per hour, whatever, but Dr. Miller's per diem is lower than a few of our teachers, but not our overall salary.
No, I appreciate you clarifying that, because that could run away real fast. So yeah, thank you.
Different ways to say it. So thanks. Okay, then Ms. Minio. You have to.
Okay, I'm finally unmuted. Okay, going last. First of all, what everyone else already said.
No.
I'm just gonna say yes. Yeah, ditto. But I think, we hear this a lot. It takes a community. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, it absolutely takes a village to educate a child, and we totally support. I think it's important to recognize right out of the gate that our community is committed to educating our children, as are we. And I appreciate all of the support you've given us, dollar-wise, but feedback-wise. It is helpful to hear what the community thinks, and we are always looking at. It is unfortunate, I think, that this COVID kind of hit right at the time where we really were at our last board retreat in February, trying to figure out how are we gonna have more in-person, face-to-face communication, and then who knew nobody worldwide would be allowed to be in face-to-face communication. So we really, I do want to say to the community, thank you. And we really are trying to communicate with you. I'm proud that we prioritize student success. That is the first and most important thing to us. That's our main goal, is to prioritize student success and to retain our staff. I think that is, I do think, to hear Dr. Miller say earlier that we're retaining our staff. That's it to me is a big deal, and it's important. Dr. Miller talked earlier in the meeting tonight about one of the goals of our strategic plan is to develop a high performing team. And I think we have to look at what does that really mean? I gave the example earlier today in my own work. There were times during the last 12 weeks when I struggled with how to do my job or how to get what I needed to get done. And I was grateful that I had somebody else, an administrator above me, to look at what all of the people who hold my job were saying and to kind of help us form a plan and move forward and figure out what we were going to do. So I think there's a value in having a strong team at all levels. And I think that's an important thing to highlight. As a high-performing team is a high-performing team from Dr. Miller on through the table of organization. It's everybody, and I'm super appreciative. And I have to give the shout out and say that I feel like distance learning increased. The benefits my children got, my personal children in my home got from the distance learning increased over time. And I think that is a credit to the high-performing team. It's a credit to the educators. It's a credit to the support staff. It's a credit to the administrators who supported them. In my home, I got a call from Mrs. Anderson, the Montrose secretary, checking in on our mental health and well-being. So I think it just goes to show that the tasks are like disseminated across the building. Everybody kind of like made it happen. I think that is a high-performing team. I think I appreciate all the information that Ms. Snowden shared earlier about our administrators. I feel like the community has been asking us a lot of questions about administrative salaries and staff in the last couple of weeks. And I think, Marley, you did a great job of highlighting, especially Dr. Williams in his role as HR director, and the savings that he creates for the district and like the effectiveness of how he does his job. Earlier tonight, we approved the repair of the Maryland gym floor. I think it's important to note that that fire was like on a Saturday. And do you know what? Mr. Eikenberry and his team were out there like on the weekend, like making it happen. You know, Dr. Miller too, but like making it happen. I think it's important to remember that our administrators do not work 8 to 5. Like their job is huge. Now, and I don't think our educators work 8 to 5 either. I don't want to like single one group out versus the other, but I think their job is huge. And I think that and I think that it's important to kind of look back to the document that we have looking up here and say that we're actually taking money, the supplementals are going to decrease, and especially administrative tasks are going to increase. So we are looking at like finances and how that relates to our administrators. So I appreciate, in conclusion of that thought, I appreciate everything that everybody is doing. I do think that we have a high performing team, and it shows in the education that our children receive, and it shows in our children themselves. They're well-rounded, awesome people, and it's because we work as a village to educate them. So I appreciate what everybody in the community contributes to that. I do want to say, I have one more thing to say, I think, about administrative, and I think it's just important to when we're talking about a high-performing team, I think it's important to like stress the fact that I'm excited to welcome Mr. Fisher, our new technology coach, to the team. But at the same time, that was a position that we debated about on as a board, like on a whole, like what we weighed the pros and cons. And you know what? Ultimately, when like the world changed and we recognized that technology needs were different, like we responded like as a team to like shaping our team in a different way that would like benefit our students the most. So I think it's important to realize that we really do look at all the positions, or any kind of position that's added, changed, created, morphed, whatever. We consider Dr. Miller is very thoughtful in how she does it. And I think that we ask her questions and take to heart what she's suggesting, so that we really kind of line it up with what we think would benefit our students. I appreciate what you all have said about the communication. I think that it is important to highlight that we really are trying to communicate with our community. But I do have to respond just a little bit. I feel like there was a lot of conversation in the last little bit about sports versus music. And I will first of all highlight like a personal story. Many of you wrote this in your letters, but I will highlight that I'm a parent who, as recently as last year, had a football player on the football field at halftime. It was the only time he got on the field in his band uniform. So I do think so. That was our big win. But I think it's important to recognize that like we're a diverse community, we're a diverse board. We really do like look at all aspects of programming, and we're not like weighing one thing versus the other. And I think it was a little bit. I want to highlight again the fact that there's no. You didn't see in any conversations about sports, because none of our there were no stipends put out for our athletic coaches for fall sports, because we're not at this point like we don't know what is going to be available, what's not going to be available. And as good stewards of like the resources, I think it's important to say we're not going to engage in anything until we're ready. We know it can happen. And so I think that I just want to highlight that idea that there is no real imbalance between sports versus music. We value both. We want to see all the programming that can happen. We value it all. Oh, and I do want to highlight one last little thing that, again, having last year, this year I had 1 student in band, but last year I had 3 students in band. And I feel like the music program, it's important to highlight there's been growth in the music program in the last several years. You know, we added the Prism Band, we added the high school jazz band. So I do want to recognize that program is has been growing, and it's something that we continue to want to focus on. So anyway, I'm sure there's more to say, but I think that's where I'm going to conclude. Hopefully we have answered all your questions and given you some more information about what we're looking at doing. All right, that's it.
Thank you.
I'm sure your son is happy that you just told everybody that he didn't get into a football game last year.
He was on the field, he knows.
Okay, so having had that rather robust discussion, which I appreciate everybody contributing and giving your thoughts, I think it's an appropriate time to entertain a motion to approve item 7B. Can I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So just to be clear, for those of you who are listening but may not have the resolution in front of you, this is a resolution that states in basic that our priorities are the academic success of our students, number 1, the retention of our current staff, and to preserve our general fund cash balance. To do that, we would direct the superintendent to cut expenditures from the general fund by $1.35 million for the fiscal year 2021, and that every effort should be made to minimize impact to student learning and development. Again, these cuts are brought about only because of the COVID pandemic, and this resolution is specifically limited to the 2021 school year. So that's the basis of our resolution. That being said, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving this resolution 7B, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. That motion carries. Okay, I appreciate everybody's work on that. I know this isn't an easy task. So moving along with the rest of our board meeting, I need to call to everyone's attention the June 25th Special Board of Education meeting. This was set at the beginning of the year. We often have financial and personnel matters to address at the end of our fiscal year, and so we have that in place. I need to attend a memorial service out of town on June 25th, and so I'm wondering if we can discuss another date so that we can give notice to our public of when we might be meeting again. And I think we need to start, Mr. Smith, with you on that, because you can give us some direction on what might be alternate days.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Snowden. So again, like you had mentioned, the reason we have this later or additional special board meeting in June is so we can update required budgetary documents with the Franklin County auditor. Budget documents for not only this year, but next year. And the deadline to submit those would be June 30th at the end of business. So going back from that date, I think we could likely have a meeting the morning of June 30th or sooner. That way I could I could submit the appropriate documents before the end of the end of business day on the 30th of June.
Okay.
And then going back from there, I think thinking about how the end of the year works and the workload that this month takes to finish the year, I would ask that we not go any sooner than about the 22nd or 23rd. Ideally, the 23rd would be about as early as I would like us to go, if that's possible. I don't know what your travel looked like, Ms. Snowden, but we could go as late as the 30th morning.
As late as the 30th. Okay. And
We
so,
weren't thinking about hosting or having the meeting in the morning though, right? We would still do an evening.
The plan for June 25th was 7:30 in the morning. And usually this is a pretty quick meeting.
Right.
We may have not done this with you, Ms. Mitchell, before, but especially with us having early June meetings, we definitely need a later meeting to wrap up the financial piece. But usually it's a quick couple item agenda type of meeting where it's 15-20 minutes.
Okay.
But in today's times, we might have other issues that we may need to address. So we certainly could have it in the evening.
No, I'm just thinking that week, if we did it earlier, evening would be better. But if it were a morning, I could make it work if it was early.
is anybody, I'd like to think of the 29th or the 30th because we plan to be out of town for that whole week in visiting family. So is the 29th or 30th work for everyone? And Ms. Mitchell, are you saying that evenings work better for you?
No, I was just saying if we had to have a meeting, then it would need to be in the evenings that week of the 22nd or the 21st. But if it's in the morning, I can make it work.
Okay.
That's fine. Like especially that early. That's, I usually don't take an appointment for work or anything before 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning anyway. So,
Okay.
and I can be flexible.
I'll need to be to work by 7:30 on the morning of the 30th. So could we look at 7:30 on the 29th? How does that work for everyone?
That's
What
better for
time?
me anyway. That's
I could
good.
do that.
7:30 a.m. on Monday, June 29th.
Yeah, that works for me too.
Great. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Virtual? Or do we think there's any possibility it will be anything other than virtual?
I pray not. I would like to be able to have the opportunity to at least socially distance. But if we meet together, we have to need to provide some way for our public to meet as well. And if the restriction in place is still for less than 10 people, then there's no way to provide that for our, we don't know. I mean, I don't anticipate having 10 people here at 7:30 in the morning, but certainly we have more than 10 people interested tonight. So I want to make sure we have that opportunity open, which means it would need to be virtual. So we'll see if we get any change in direction from the state or county health departments about that. Okay.
I hope that we are still virtual for that because I'm still dealing with the need to be really super careful because of people in my household.
Yes. I appreciate that. And I do want to make sure that that we honor that as well.
Will it be virtual?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Will it be
Thank you.
virtual?
Most likely will be virtual.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
As we say, everything is fluid. This probably
Right.
is, but at the moment, I think that's how we would expect it to be. Okay, so that has us, and that is not anything that we need to take any action on. But I appreciate Mr. Smith can notice it to the public at the appropriate, and the press at the appropriate time. So I am moving now to our executive session. So as a public board of education, we can only hold executive session after a majority of the quorum of the board determines by a roll call vote to hold such session, and only at a regular special meeting for the sole purpose and the consideration of the following matters. And this, for ours this evening, we will be considering the employment of a public official. So that is our purpose in meeting an executive session tonight. For those of you on the call, what we plan to do is meet in executive session privately, and we will return to close the meeting officially, but we do not anticipate taking any action after executive session. So for practical purposes, there will not be any further discussion tonight that you will be able to participate or hear. So that is the end of, so now I need to request a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
Thank you.
Third.
Mr. Smith, can you give roll call for us?
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Barno,
Yes.
Ms. Minio,
Yes.
Snowden.
Yes. Thank you. Given that, we will meet in executive session. We will keep this open, or we'll keep, Kyle, you're going to have just a note up, right, that says that we're in executive session.
I believe I've got it up.
Thank you. That's
Does it-
perfect.
You see
All
that?
right.
Okay.
And I'll return to this when we're done with executive session. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Do we do this?